The insect epidemic began mid-World War II. Soldiers abroad faced diseases such as typhus and malaria, which were spread by insects. A synthetic chemical called dichlorodiphenyl trichloroethane, also known as DDT, was proficient in eradicating the insects, and so it was used in abundance. Even after World War II, its usage increased. It went from 124 million pounds in 1947 to 635 million pounds in 1960. Meanwhile, Rachel Carson worked at the Bureau of Fisheries. She noticed up close how DDT was affecting wildlife. She suggested that an article be written about its dangers, but Reader's Digest turned her down. So, she was pressured to write her own book about the pesticidal hazards. She had previously written 3 books, The Sea Around Us, Under the Sea Wind, and The Edge of the Sea, all of which were successes. With her research and observations, Carson found that the overused pesticides, especially DDT, brought negative effects to the environment. For birds, it was found to cause thinning of eggshells, which led to more breakage. In bodies of water, aquatic microorganisms like algae and plankton were stunted in growth and photosynthesis. It only took 1/10 of a microgram of DDT in a liter of water to cause this. This is problematic as they were also consuming DDT. Being at the base of the food chain, all of the other species would have been affected. It was also stored in the bodies of tolerant invertebrates, which intolerant predators consumed. Humans were also found to be storing DDT in their bodies, as 60% of its production was for food. These contaminations were hazardous, as they could cause nervous system failure and liver failure. All of this information presented in Silent Spring was a huge shock to the public.
Ms. Carson maintains that the balance of nature is a major force in the survival of man, whereas the modern chemist, the modern biologist, the modern scientist believes that man is steadily controlling nature.
Now, to these people, apparently the balance of nature was something that was repealed as soon as man came on the scene. Well, you might just as well assume that you could repeal the law of gravity. The balance of nature is built of a series of interrelationships between living things and between living things and their environment. You can't just step in with some brute force and change one thing without changing with many others. Now, this doesn't mean, of course, that we must never interfere, that we must not attempt to tilt that balance of nature in our favor. But unless we do bring these chemicals under better control, we are certainly headed for disaster.
Silent Spring was a huge success. It stayed on the bestsellers list for 31 weeks, and she was brought to several shows such as CBS to discuss it. She led thousands to her cause, and a few weeks later, the President's Science Advisory Committee released a pesticide report as a result of Carson's Silent Spring, and declared that elimination of the use of persistent toxic pesticides should be the goal. The chemical industry heavily attacked Silent Spring. She was called out for being a hysterical animal-loving freak and claimed that her data couldn't prove long-term effects. Carson went up to the U.S. Senate twice within that year to testify of her case. Unfortunately, she died shortly after. However, the EPA was formed in her honor, also known as Environmental Protection Agency, and they looked into her pleas. In 1972, the EPA issued the ban of a plethora of pesticides, including DDT. Even today, her legacy is still felt. The Rachel Carson Award was established to be given out to American women that make groundbreaking scientific inquiries, as well as displaying passion and concern for the well-being of nature, just as Rachel Carson did. Rachel Carson lives on in the hearts of those that wish to make a difference.